Rizei Shun led Akari and Cananan into a massive underground facility owned by the Rizei family. Cananan immediately noticed how similar it looked to the mock battle arena beneath their school. Shun explained that the concept was the same, but the scale was completely different. The school's underground arena was designed to withstand battles between A-rank hunters. This facility, however, was an S-grade arena built specifically to endure mock battles between S-rank hunters. Inside the arena, 2 S-rank hunters were already fighting. One was Darai Batbold, a Mongolian S-rank hunter wielding a massive weapon. The other was Nura Bint Saley, possessing a rare light-based ability. The moment their weapons collided, a gigantic shockwave erupted through the battlefield. Even Cananan was startled by the impact. The arena was destroyed from their attacks. Cananan recognized the material and explained that the battlefield was made from memory-shaped magic steel. Shun confirmed it. Currently, there was no known material capable of completely enduring the power of S-rank hunters. Because of that, the arena focused on rapid regeneration rather than total durability, minimizing the aftereffects of battles as much as possible. From above, several other S-rank hunters watched the duel. One remarked that Darai Batbold was still as monstrous as ever. Another commented that Nura Bint Saleh's rare light abilities remained incredibly dangerous. Akari noticed them and smiled with interest. She asked who they were. Shun explained that these were the 8 S-rank hunters who had agreed to cooperate in the operation against the Hunter Association. Shun then called down to the 2 fighters and told them the warm-up was over. It was time to begin the strategy meeting. Soon afterward, the gathered hunters assembled together. Shun thanked them for their cooperation and explained the objective. The operation aimed to arrest the 6 remaining top executives of the Hunter Association. Those executives gathered once every 3 months at the American headquarters. The next meeting would take place in 5 days. Their plan was to raid the location and capture everyone at once. One elderly S-rank hunter, Leo Robinson, raised his hand. He admitted that gathering this many S-rank hunters was an impressive achievement. However, even this force was still insufficient. Among the Hunter Association executives were 3 S-rank hunters, and above even them stood the world's strongest hunter, the only SSS-rank hunter alive, Akiyama Shun. Originally, there had never been an SSS rank classification, but Shun was so overwhelmingly superior to every other S-rank hunter that the Hunter Association created an entirely new category just for him. Even after granting him all 13 official titles recognized by the association, it still did not feel sufficient. No one laughed at the absurdity of the SSS rank title, because everyone understood the truth. Akiyama Shun, simply on another level. Leo Robinson warned that Shun alone was stronger than all the other S-rank hunters combined. Shun calmly acknowledged his concern. That was why they had prepared a special strategy. On the day of the executives' meeting, the United Nations would submit a fabricated emergency request regarding multiple first-class gate outbreaks. Naturally, the request itself would be fake. Its purpose was to lure Akiyama Shun away from headquarters, and while the operation unfolded, Akari would personally hold him back. Leo Robinson finally understood the plan. However, another S-rank hunter interrupted. An American hunter named Brad James stepped forward and questioned whether Akari was truly capable of such a feat. Yes, they had all seen the footage of her defeating Majima Junpei, but with modern technology, deepfake videos were easy to fabricate, and according to official records, Akari still possessed only E-rank magical power. Several other hunters silently shared the same doubts. Shun tried to explain that there were special circumstances behind Akari's existence, but before she could continue, Akari stepped forward herself. She said there was only one solution. Then, without warning, she kicked Brad James directly in the chest. The impact launched him into the wall hard enough to crack it. The room instantly fell silent. Brad glared at her furiously and demanded to know what she thought she was doing. Akari casually replied that she simply wanted to educate an ignorant boy about what she was capable of. He should be grateful. The enraged hunter declared that he would kill her. Akari smiled. She pointed out that this operation depended entirely on everyone trusting her strength. So if anyone else still doubted her power, they were free to fight her as well. Cananan sighed as she watched Akari grinning excitedly. Despite her words, it was obvious what Akari truly wanted. Inside the battlefield arena, Akari stood facing 3 S-rank hunters at once. On one side was Brad James. Beside him stood Leo Robinson. Brad laughed confidently and told Leo Robinson that he could handle Akari alone. Leo calmly replied that young Americans were always reckless. Brad immediately snapped back, mocking Leo for coming from an old dried-up country. Before the argument could continue, Shun stepped forward and announced that she would participate as well. Akari looked surprised. Shun explained that she intended to fight alongside them during the upcoming operation, so she wanted Akari to witness her abilities at least once. Akari smiled excitedly. 3 S-rank hunters at the same time sounded wonderful. Cananan warned them not to overdo things, since every one of them was an important asset. From the balcony above, the other S-rank hunters watched carefully. Cananan raised her hand and declared the start of the mock battle. But before she could properly begin, Brad already charged forward with a punch while shouting for Akari to die. The attack sent Akari crashing into the wall. Cananan immediately yelled that she had not even said start yet. Brad shrugged and said it did not matter. If they were evaluating real combat ability, then surprise attacks were perfectly valid. Akari laughed as she climbed back to her feet. Since she had surprise attacked Brad earlier, she considered them even now. Everyone watching was shocked. Brad's direct hit had landed cleanly without Akari guarding herself. Yet she was completely unharmed. Brad stared at her in disbelief. Akari pointed out that he had subconsciously held back because he did not want to kill her. Despite his appearance, he was actually rather kind. Then, she casually suggested that he might be happier spending the rest of his life appreciating flowers instead of fighting. Cananan quietly observed that Brad truly had restrained himself. Even so, the fact that an S-rank hunter's attack caused almost no damage was terrifying. Irritated, Brad removed his jacket and activated his enhancement magic, Steroid Boost. His body expanded dramatically as his muscles swelled with overwhelming power. Akari watched with genuine interest. Enhancement magic was rare even in this world, and she had never seen someone increase their physical strength to such a degree. As Brad rushed toward her again, Akari thought to herself that this time she would intentionally take the hit without guarding. She wanted to measure his full power directly. Brad's punch smashed into her face. The impact launched Akari into the air. Blood dripped from her nose. Yet instead of pain, she smiled with excitement. As she expected, Brad was strong enough to injure her. Brad laughed and jumped after her, preparing another attack. Akari grabbed his fist midair and told him that the free service only happened once. Then she admitted that while he was impressive, he was still below Majima Junpei. She then kicked him. She unleashed Fire Orb level 25 toward him, but at that moment, Leo Robinson stepped forward. With a single swing of his sword, he physically cut through the incoming fire spheres. Akari stared in surprise. He had actually sliced apart her magic itself. Leo calmly reminded Brad that Majima Junpei had been one of the 5 strongest people in the world. Reaching that level was not easy. Brad clicked his tongue in annoyance and admitted that Leo was interfering unnecessarily. Leo simply replied that now Brad understood Akari's strength. This was an opponent they needed to face together. At that moment, Rize Shun finally entered the battle. Using her ice magic, she activated Bloom Icicle Ice Kill. A gigantic bloom of ice erupted beneath Akari's feet. Akari dodged most of the attack, but some of the ice still spread across her body. Akari praised Shun's abilities, though she noted that Shun's raw output was slightly below Brad and Leo. Shun openly admitted it. Among S-rank hunters, she was on the weaker side. That was exactly why she needed allies and why she had relied on Akari to defeat Majima Junpei. Instantly, Brad and Leo attacked together. Akari blocked Leo's sword with one hand and caught Brad's fist with the other. However, Leo's blade still cut into her hand. At that exact moment, Shun activated another Bloom Icicle attack. Brad and Leo jumped away while Akari was struck directly. A gigantic icicle pierced through her stomach before exploding outward. The force blasted Akari across the battlefield. Blood dripped from her mouth as she lay on the ground. Yet even then, she was smiling. Each individual S-rank hunter was weaker than Majima Junpei, but the 3 of them together were unquestionably powerful. Leo laughed and stated that if Akari could not easily overcome the 3 of them, then she would never stand a chance against Akiyama Shun. Shun immediately warned them to stay alert. This was only the beginning. If they relaxed now, they would die. Brad looked confused. Then Akari slowly rose to her feet with a delighted smile. She promised that she would meet all of their expectations. Dark energy exploded from her body. Akari activated her second form, Angramaniu. As Akari transformed into her second form, every S-rank hunter in the arena fell silent. Dark wings spread from her back as she stood smiling before them. Even the hunters watching from the balcony were stunned and confused by the overwhelming pressure pouring from her body. Akari stretched her arms slightly and smiled at her opponents. "Please entertain me." Hearing that, Brad James realized something terrifying. He did not even need to fight her to understand. Akari was a monster far beyond normal logic. Rizi Shion quietly added that Akari still possessed several more transformations beyond this one. Brad's eyes widened in shock. Before anyone could react, Akari casually swung one arm. The impact alone blasted Brad straight into the wall. The collision was so violent that it tore a massive hole through the arena wall, and Brad was left heavily injured from a single attack. All the S-rank hunters watching were horrified. At that moment, Leo Robinson attacked from behind. As he swung his sword, Akari smiled and asked him a question. Did his ability allow him to forcibly cut through magical powers? Leo replied that his skill ignored differences in output and bypassed both attack and defense. It was an extremely effective ability. However, when he struck Akari's wings, his sword failed to cut through them. Leo's expression changed instantly. Akari calmly explained that the power of Angra Mainyu completely nullified the properties of other magic. If they wanted to defeat her, they would need to rely purely on overwhelming firepower. Shion immediately responded. If that was the case, then they would simply overpower her directly. Activating Blizzard Blade, countless ice crystals surrounded her body. At the same time, Brad activated Steroid Boost Triple. His body expanded to an even larger size than before as his muscles swelled with explosive power. The two S-rank hunters charged at Akari together. Akari laughed excitedly. Her second form also dramatically increased her own physical strength. When the attacks reached her, she stopped both of them with her bare hands. Then she kicked them away effortlessly. All three S-rank opponents crashed onto the ground. Akari looked at them with shining eyes and burst into laughter. It was incredible. Despite taking direct hits from her, none of them had died. Even in her previous world, people this strong only appeared once every 100 years. Now she wanted even more. Akari announced that she would show them her full power. Before she could continue, Shion quickly interrupted. That would not be necessary. At this point, nobody doubted Akari's strength anymore. She looked toward Brad, asking whether he agreed. Brad slowly admitted it. Akari truly was powerful. Akari looked disappointed. The fight had only just started getting interesting. Cananan sighed and pointed out that Akari had completely forgotten the original purpose of the mock battle. Leo Robinson laughed softly and admitted that Akari had exceeded all of his expectations. Then Akari turned toward him and asked another question. From the way he spoke earlier, it sounded as though he had witnessed Akiyama Shun fight personally. What did he think? Could Akiyama Shun defeat her? Leo was stunned by the wording of the question. Normally, people asked whether they could defeat Akiyama Shun. Akari, however, was asking whether Akiyama Shun could defeat her. It sounded almost as if she desperately wanted to lose. Akari simply smiled. After a long pause, Leo gave his honest answer. He truly did not know. Akiyama Shun was the same kind of existence as Akari, a transcendent monster who conquered everything while using only a fraction of his true power. Trying to compare the two of them was like asking which infinity was larger than another infinity. It was impossible to understand logically. Hearing that answer, Akari smiled even wider. Instead of discouraging her, it only made her more excited than ever before. In Washington, D.C., the Hunter Association possessed two headquarters buildings. One was the regular headquarters located in New York. The other stood in Washington itself, the Black House. This building served as the personal headquarters of Nicholas Gold. Aside from its black exterior, the structure was almost completely identical to the White House, located only a few meters away. As Nicholas Gold walked through the corridors alongside Max Muller, he explained the reason behind the building. Symbols were important. The Black House had intentionally been built slightly taller and wider than the White House. Naturally, such a construction could have caused major backlash. But whenever politicians or influential figures opposed the Hunter Association, hunters simply stopped protecting them. Soon afterward, those troublesome individuals conveniently disappeared during gate disasters. On the other hand, people who accepted the Hunter Association's authority received safety and protection. Over time, society began trusting the association more than their own governments. That perception eventually became reality. The Black House symbolized that hierarchy in a visible form, which side stood above and which side stood below. Nicholas explained that dictators throughout history never built statues or monuments purely for vanity. Such symbols existed for practical reasons. They elevated rulers into godlike figures within the minds of the people. The Hunter Association had already become a supranational organization greater than any individual country. Nicholas told Max Muller that he too should learn how to control the masses properly. Max agreed outwardly, but internally, he reflected on the terrifying man before him. When the gates first appeared more than 50 years ago, Nicholas Gold had only been a teenager, yet he was among the very first people to understand the importance of hunters. He founded the Hunter Association itself. That foresight allowed him to become the richest man in human history, controlling nearly 30% of the world's wealth. Soon afterward, Nicholas entered the conference room, where the World Branch representatives were already gathered. Smiling, he announced the start of another meeting of the world's rulers. Meanwhile, outside the Black House, several trucks approached the entrance. From them emerged the S-Rank Hunter Alliance assembled by the Reizi family. Reizi Shun informed the group that Akiyama Shun had successfully been lured away by the fake emergency quest. Leo Robinson laughed with relief, saying that was the best possible news. The security guards at the entrance immediately recognized the incoming group as S-Rank Hunters. Shun calmly asked them to open the gate without resistance. At the same time in Taiwan in Peach Garden Plaza, a gate had appeared. Although officially reported as a first-class gate, it was actually only third class. A woman stood near the gates as Akari approached her. Akari immediately asked whether the man called Akiyama Shun had entered the gate. The woman confirmed it. Without hesitation, Akari replied that she would head inside as well. As she began walking toward the gate, the woman called out to her and wished her good luck. Akari smiled. Then she replied that those words should instead be directed toward the other person. He would probably need them far more. The moment Akari stepped inside the gate, countless MB-class monsters attacked her. With a single slash, she instantly cut them all down. To Akari, they were nothing more than tasteless appetizers. She continued deeper into the gate. Then, finally, she found him. Standing alone in the depths of the dungeon was the world's strongest hunter, Akiyama Shun. Akari looked down at him with excitement shining in her eyes. Then she asked the question she had waited so long to ask. Will you let me taste defeat and death? Back at the Black House, it was a truly lightning-fast surprise attack. Using Cananan's electricity powers, the defense systems of the Black House were instantly disabled. The S-Rank Hunters immediately stormed the building and attacked the bodyguards protecting the executives. From the moment Reizi Shun and her companions appeared at the gate until they reached the conference room, only 1 minute had passed. The doors burst open. Standing before the Hunter Association executives, Reizi Shun declared that it was time for the dictators of the Gate era to return sovereignty back to the nations and the people. But instead of panicking, Nicholas Gold simply smiled. Meanwhile, inside the gate at Taoyuan Cultural Plaza, Akari stood face to face with Akiyama Shun. Akari smiled excitedly and asked if they should begin, but Akiyama Shun remained silent. Confused by his reaction, Akari instantly closed the distance and kicked him in the stomach. The man flew into the wall. However, Akari immediately realized something was wrong. The person she had struck was not Akiyama Shun at all. It was merely one of the Hunter Association bodyguards. Akari sighed. She knew it. The impact did not feel like she was fighting a truly strong opponent. Back inside the Black House, Nicholas Gold praised Reizi Shun. He admitted that her tactical sense was excellent. The key to a successful surprise attack was keeping information secret. Most conspiracies failed because too many people became involved, increasing the chance of leaks. Even a simple surprise party could easily be exposed. Large-scale conspiracies involving hundreds of people were almost impossible to hide. By reducing the number of people involved to the absolute minimum, Shun nearly succeeded in winning instantly. However, Nicholas explained that his side had simply prepared better. At that moment, one of the bodyguards standing near Shun suddenly transformed. His appearance changed into Akiyama Shun. The S-Rank Hunters froze in shock. Brad James immediately shouted in disbelief. Akiyama Shun was supposed to be in Taiwan. Another hunter questioned how Shun had failed to notice him when her magical detection abilities were considered among the best in the world. Nicholas calmly revealed the answer. The ability belonged to Max Muller. Max explained that his magic allowed him to completely swap the appearance and presence of two people, or even two groups, at the same time. One of their workers had secretly exchanged places with the Hunter Association bodyguard. In that instant, Shun realized the truth. Their information had leaked because the Hunter Association had been using Max Muller's abilities for espionage For many years, Nicholas smiled and explained that large organizations survived because they constantly prepared countless contingency plans. The Reize family had simply stumbled into one of them. Then Nicholas gave a cold warning. If they could survive this situation, they were welcome to remember the lesson. Anger filled Shun's eyes as Akiyama Shun silently stood before the S-rank hunters with a sword in hand. Brad James clenched his fists and shouted that they had no choice but to fight. Meanwhile, inside the Taiwan gate, Akari found herself surrounded by gigantic monsters. For a moment, even Akari looked surprised. These were YB-class monsters. A gate of this level should never naturally contain creatures this powerful. One of the Hunter Association workers laughed and explained the truth. The Hunter Association had deliberately released captured high-level monsters into the gate. Their goal was to force Akari into a desperate struggle. Then, the worker activated an emergency escape crystal to flee safely from the gate. Akari noticed the crystal and casually remarked that the Hunter Association's employee benefits system seemed surprisingly reliable. Then, she smiled excitedly. If the Hunter Association was willing to prepare such satisfying appetizers for her, she had no reason to complain. Dark energy exploded around her. Akari activated her second form, Angramaniu. Then, looking at the army of powerful monsters surrounding her, she smiled with anticipation. The only disappointing thing was that she would have to finish eating them too quickly. The monsters charged toward Akari all at once. Instead of fear, Akari laughed with excitement. With a single punch, she completely obliterated one of the monsters. Three massive dragon immediately unleashed a stream of fire toward her. Akari took the attack head-on and walked through the flames completely unharmed. Then she smiled and praised the monster. Compared to the dragons from her previous world, it was actually quite strong. Not a bad appetizer at all. Akari declared that she would devour it in a single bite. Then she activated Fire Orb level 42. An enormous amount of fire engulfed the dragons and burned it into a crisp instantly. Meanwhile, inside the Black House conference room, Akiyama Shun stood facing Reize Shion and the allied S-rank hunters. One of the hunters admitted that this was the first time meeting him face to face. But it seemed the rumors about him were completely true. The entire room crackled from the pressure of Akiyama Shun's aura alone. Nicholas Gold suddenly laughed and proposed a bet. How many minutes would it take Akiyama to defeat everyone present? Vikram Singh considered the question carefully. Since Akiyama Shun was facing 9 S-rank hunters at once, he estimated 10 minutes. Zhang Jie predicted 18 minutes, assuming 2 minutes per S-rank hunter. Max Muller estimated 15 minutes. Sofia Pereira representative guessed 17. Alina Petrov representative said 12. Nicholas Gold smiled confidently. His prediction was only 5 minutes. At that moment, Brad James attacked first, activating steroid boost. He charged directly at Akiyama Shun with tremendous force. But just before the attack connected, a massive shield appeared automatically in front of Shun and blocked the strike effortlessly. Brad stared in shock. Akiyama Shun calmly explained the ability, Automatic Aegis, a defensive end skill that automatically protected him from all attacks. No surprise attack would ever work against him. Reize Shion realized immediately what this meant. End skills stood at the very top of skill trees. Among all S-rank hunters in the world, only 4 people had ever reached that level. Naturally, every single one of them was monstrously powerful, but Akiyama Shun was something even beyond that. Shun casually stated that he had expected something like this to happen eventually. Then he activated another end skill, Shanatsu Hiko God. A gigantic tornado erupted instantly and blasted through the ceiling of the Black House itself. Brad James was thrown away violently by the storm. Nicholas Gold quickly shouted for moderation. If too much of the building was destroyed, ordinary people would ultimately suffer by paying for the repairs. One of the hunters quietly admitted that the rumors were true after all. Reize Shion nodded grimly. Akiyama Shun alone possessed 5 separate end skills. That level of power was completely abnormal. Then Shun calmly looked at all of them and announced that he would begin fighting back now. Before attacking, he politely asked whether they were truly sure about not surrendering. The atmosphere in the room froze. Then Akiyama Shun activated yet another ability, Grand Sword Confog. Only 1 minute had passed since the battle began. In response to Akiyama Shun using an end skill, the S-rank hunters and Cananan launched a counterattack with their maximum firepower. Darai Batbold unleashed Earthquake Smasher. Nura Bint Sayla attacked with her powerful light abilities. The rest of the S-rank hunters also released their strongest techniques at the same time. A gigantic explosion engulfed the battlefield. But before anyone could even react, Akiyama Shun instantly counterattacked. Every S-rank hunter was blasted out of the Black House and thrown into the yard outside. Now the battle had fully moved into the open. Cananan stared at the destruction in disbelief. Akiyama Shun was far stronger than Majima Junpei, and he still possessed 3 more end skills equal in power to the ones he had already shown. He truly was the world's strongest hunter. At the moment, the only person unable to continue fighting was Brad James. Rizi Shion quickly approached the others and explained the situation. There was absolutely no chance of winning through a normal fight. Their only possible strategy was relying on Leo Robinson and his ability to cut through magical powers. If they could create an opening, Leo might be able to land a fatal slash. Leo laughed and complained that it was a heavy burden to place on an old man. One of the hunters pointed out that Leo had stayed on defense during the earlier counterattack. It seemed he already expected this situation from the beginning. Leo simply laughed and claimed they were overestimating him. Shion apologized to him. Although he had originally retired, she was the one who dragged him back into battle and placed this responsibility on his shoulders. Leo quietly replied that he too had his own feelings about the Gate era. In his mind, he remembered a child being killed by a monster long ago. Shion immediately gave the order to attack. All of the hunters charged toward Akiyama Shun together. Rizi Shion uses her skill Blizzard Chaff to block Shun view. Shun calmly closed his eyes. Even with the blizzard disrupting magical detection, he could still sense 8 separate presences approaching him. One person had been incapacitated earlier, so this coordinated attack clearly aimed to conceal Leo Robinson's strike among the others. It was an excellent emergency strategy, but ultimately meaningless if everyone was simply blown away at once. Akiyama Shun activated another ability, Fog Slash. A violent wave of force exploded outward and sent every attacker flying away. However, among the group was Brad James. Akiyama Shun had assumed he was already unable to fight. At that exact moment, Leo Robinson suddenly appeared behind him. Brad laughed and said, "It's on you, old man." The entire scene had been an act designed to deceive Akiyama Shun. Leo calmly explained that if the wind blew them away before reaching him, they would never have a chance. But at this distance, it no longer mattered. Leo swung his sword. Instantly, Akiyama Shun activated automatic Aegis. The defensive shield appeared once again to protect him, but Leo smiled. Against his ability, durability, and toughness meant nothing. The sword sliced straight through the shield with ease. For the first time in the battle, even Akiyama Shun looked genuinely shocked. 19 years ago, in City 432, a horrifying incident occurred. A massive number of people suddenly died from acute magic poisoning. Normally, this phenomenon only happened when ordinary humans with low magical power were exposed to overwhelming magical energy from YB-class monsters or higher. Investigators wearing hazmat suits moved through the streets filled with corpses. One of them questioned how something like this was even possible. The source of the magical poisoning was eventually traced to a maternity hospital. Inside the delivery room, the investigators found a horrifying scene. The doctors and nurses had all died from magic poisoning. The child's mother was also dead. Only the newborn baby remained alive, and the magical power leaking unconsciously from that infant was the cause of the disaster. That child was Akiyama Shun. The investigators realized the terrifying truth. The newborn baby had accidentally killed countless people, including his own parents, simply by existing. The child was later named Akiyama Shun, after the name written in his mother's maternal and child health handbook. Back in the present, Akiyama Shun apologized calmly. It seemed everyone had misunderstood something. It was not only his end skills that made him powerful. He himself was physically overwhelming as well. As he spoke, he casually caught Leo Robinson's sword between 2 fingers. Every hunter watching was stunned. Leo sighed and admitted that this truly was the power of an SS rank hunter. In the next instant, Akiyama Shun defeated Leo Robinson with a single attack. Then he instantly appeared among the remaining hunters and overwhelmed them one after another with pure physical ability alone. Rizi Shion watched in disbelief. He was defeating S-rank hunters without even relying on skills anymore. Suddenly, Akiyama Shun appeared directly in front of her. Before she could react, he slashed her arm. Then, he punched her so hard that she was launched through the yard and crashed into the Black House building. Standing calmly in the middle of the battlefield, Akiyama Shun remarked that this was the inevitable result, no matter how many opponents there were. Honestly, he had hoped for a little more challenge. Inside the conference room, Nicholas Gold laughed happily. Exactly 5 minutes. His prediction had been correct. Since he never specified what the bet involved, he casually suggested using his winnings to claim the next gate that appeared. The Chinese representative agreed, as long as no special resources were discovered inside it. Nearby, Shun struggled to stand despite her injuries. Her body barely moved. The other S-rank hunters were also in terrible condition. Nicholas looked at her and sighed. It was unfortunate. She was a beautiful young revolutionary with noble ideals, but the world was rigid and unreasonable. No matter how pure someone's intentions were, reality was not kind enough to change so easily. Then Nicholas suddenly noticed something behind Akiyama Shun. His expression shifted slightly. If she stood up now, he might lose the bet after all. Standing in the ruined yard behind Akiyama Shun was Majima Cananan. Shun stared at her in shock. Nicholas warned her that it was already too late, and a rank hunter had no chance against someone like Akiyama Shun. Cananan calmly replied that power ruled everything in the Gate era. Ordinary people lived in fear, while only the strong became wealthy and exploited others. As electricity crackled around her body, Cananan admitted that she hated the Gate era as well. It was the same world that had created monsters like her brother. Akiyama Shun quietly observed her. Using the cells of Majima Junpei truly was like creating a demonic beast. Still, he questioned whether resistance at this point was not simply futile. Cananan looked directly at him without fear. Whether it was futile or not was something she would decide only after fighting with everything she had. As they stood facing each other, the world representatives carefully observed the battle. The Chinese representative commented that this was the first successful example of the superhuman mass production project he had ever seen. The Russian representative added that perhaps blood relations truly were the key after all. Vikram Singh replied that he had attempted similar experiments countless times in his own country, but none had succeeded. The Brazilian representative smiled and admitted that regardless of the outcome, this was still an incredible achievement. However, whether it would actually be enough to defeat Akiyama Shun was another matter entirely. Cananan slowly raised her hand. A powerful light erupted from her palm and shot toward Akiyama Shun. In response, he instantly summoned automatic Aegis and blocked the attack effortlessly. Then, he calmly questioned whether she truly believed something like that could penetrate his shield. Cananan smiled slightly and asked him another question instead. How many shields could he maintain at the same time? For a brief moment, Akiyama Shun looked confused. At that instant, Cananan unleashed her electric powers and formed 3 massive electric dragons. All 3 dragons attacked him simultaneously from different directions. But it still was not enough. Akiyama Shun calmly generated a second shield and completely blocked the attack again. Suddenly, he noticed a bullet flying toward him from behind. Without hesitation, he formed a third shield to stop it. Cananan immediately understood. Maintaining 3 shields simultaneously was likely his current limit. She had successfully gathered information about the enemy's defensive ability. However, even though the bullet failed to fully pierce his defense, it still slightly injured him. Akiyama Shun looked at her calmly and explained the reality of their difference in rank. The gap between them was so overwhelming that it was not even a contest. She could not properly penetrate the magical defense constantly surrounding his body. Then, he drew his sword. Sharp blade-shaped boomerangs formed around him and instantly shot toward Cananan. Cananan immediately activated Lightning Step and closed the distance between them at incredible speed. Akiyama Shun easily avoided the attack. Meanwhile, Cananan lost control of her movement and smashed directly into a wall. Still struggling to stand, she angrily shouted that she was not finished yet. Raising her hand again, she unleashed another powerful lightning attack. But even that failed to break through his shield. Akiyama Shun calmly stated that she was not even close to reaching his level. Cananan glared at him and declared that she would force her way up there no matter what. The lightning surrounding her body suddenly intensified dramatically. Even Akiyama Shun looked surprised. Had her output increased again. Blood dripped from Canan's mouth as she continued forcing out more power beyond her body's limits. Akiyama Shun warned her that she would die if she continued increasing the output rate like this. But Cananan refused to stop. She would never know her limits unless she pushed beyond them, using power far beyond what her body could handle. She continued attacking desperately. Then suddenly, her own lightning exploded violently around her. The backlash shattered her attack and sent her flying backward. Even while collapsed on the ground coughing blood, Cananan still muttered that she needed more power. Akiyama Shun slowly walked toward her and raised his sword. The battle was over. As he prepared to strike her down, Cananan realized the truth. Even after using Majima Junpei's cells, it still was not enough. At that moment, an old memory surfaced in her mind. Back when she was a child, Junpei once sat beside her while she struggled to control her electricity. He told her not to let her powers control her. Magic was merely a tool, nothing more. Young Cananan tearfully asked whether controlling such power was truly possible. Junpei replied that it was. More than talent, it was simply a matter of attitude. After all, she was his younger sister. She needed to have confidence in herself. Back in the present, Canan's magical power suddenly surged again. Akiyama Shun's eyes widened slightly. Even the world representatives watching the battle were shocked. Nicholas Gold muttered in disbelief. This was no longer normal. Max Muller questioned whether this was truly the power of a demonic beast. Cananan slowly stood back up. Then she calmly declared that physical attacks were useless against her now. As she raised her hand, an enormous amount of electrifying magical power exploded outward and illuminated the entire battlefield.